This is the Share a Voice podcast, presented by Look Left Marketing. In each episode, we talk to the smartest B2B leaders to tackle the most pressing marketing challenges. Here's your host, Look Left Senior Vice President, Jennifer Tanner.
Today, I'm joined by Julie Kirby, IT PR specialist working for Clariant Global. Julie is based in London, and I've had the pleasure of partnering with her to represent clients across the Atlantic for several years, and I'm excited that we can share our expertise today. Thanks for joining us, Julie.
Thanks, Jen. Nice to see you.
So, Julie, you and I have discussed the disruptive changes happening in the IT field over the past couple of years. From your perspective, what is the market like overseas where you are?
I think similar to the States, not quite the same. I would say that you hear a lot in market reports. I was reading something a couple of days ago in a Deloitte tech report saying that the tech sector in the States is ready for growth. But I'm not sure that for those of us working in PR, IT PR, we're seeing quite the same thing. There's loads of focus on generative AI, lots of focus on how to monetize it, lots of excitement about technology in general. But I think that a lot of companies on both sides of the Atlantic are hedging their bets. They're being quite cautious. And I've seen a lot of lack of confidence, I think, particularly in SMEs who are just here concerned about high energy costs, inflation, high levels of business tax, and more broadly, I think, geopolitical issues. So I think that we had a difficult time. We haven't come out of it yet. There are some signs of growth for ITPR, but I would say they're not quite here yet, but hopefully we're seeing little green shoots again.
Are there specific industries that you think are showing more signs of growth or having more success? AI, I'm sure you'll say, but like cybersecurity, anything like that?
Yeah, definitely both of those. I think also anything to do with data centers, and obviously AI fits into that. I've done so much work recently around data centers and how they're having to shift to meet demand and how demand's changing. And the emphasis within data centers is also changing editorially, what they want to talk about, their issues, about how much power they're using, what they need to withstand this huge demand that's coming their way, and how they're adapting for the future. So that's a big issue, I would say. Cybersecurity, yes, for sure.
And AI is driving those changes in the data center too, I
Yeah,
feel like.
it's all about AI. I think that the shift is so huge that everything that they're doing is about meeting this enormous demand for compute power. And that's going to require a lot of change, I think, in the way that they run, in their capacity.
So from your perspective, how are things changing in the media landscape over in the UK?
You mean in terms of actual media or just in general about approaches from PR agencies?
In general with the media, for instance, I think in the US, we're seeing a lot more paid areas, a lot more podcast and written opportunities that are paid. We're seeing a lot less staff, a lot of layoffs, and some split opinions on AI. Some are running AI checkers and will not accept work created by AI. And then we have other publications that are leveraging their own AI to pick up press releases and rewrite that content for their own sites. So just curious if you're seeing anything similar.
I haven't seen one publication or editor who's been positive about AI in terms of the use of it for producing content, not one. I have had 2 or 3 editors recently say, yes, we're happy to take this piece from you, but don't use AI to produce it. How they know, I'm not entirely sure. I have looked into that because, always interesting to know what the tells are. But I am beginning to see that more. And I think for any agency, any creative type of role, really, there is a temptation to use AI to help you be more creative. So there's a bit of a balance there, I think, between those that are producing the content and those that are publishing it, particularly in terms of them wanting unique, original words and insights, and it not coming from an amalgamation of lots of different things from the internet, obviously. So yes, I definitely am seeing that. A lot more podcasts. I think a lot of people are doing video like you. And that's a good thing because that's all about personality and it's on the spot thoughts, which is great. Not so many layoffs. I think this is very much a US based thing, clients and in the media. I haven't seen that so much. I've seen change, but not so much layoffs here. I think it's quite different here at the moment.
What service areas are growing and have the most demand right now? Is it media relations, AR, content, social media?
Well, I think that because we've had difficulties, because there's been challenges in terms of keeping clients who are struggling and cutting their budgets, agencies are having to be a lot more multi-service oriented and, offer a lot more than just standard media relations. And over the past, I would say, 4 or 5 years since COVID, we've really focused on making sure that clients know that we can offer all of these different things. We've always done analyst relations. It's been part of our portfolio for many, many years. But I think now we do a lot more pushing for research in order to get data, because data is very valuable when you're pitching. We've done a lot more of content creation that has nothing to do necessarily with PR. And I think also, things like social media, you've got to include, and maybe even crisis communications. So there's a lot there. And I think that clients often don't realize just how much skill there is in these other services when they're taking on a PR agency. So it's worth, inquiring about that. And, events, speaking engagements, those kinds of things, they're all valuable. They're all part of the mix. You need your messaging to be consistent throughout. So once you've set that and you're happy with that, then you want to keep repeating it and really get that across in as effective a way as possible. So definitely integrated.
When clients are coming to you, what are their main goals most often?
Well, one of their main goals, of course, is to be in the Financial Times, or US clients, it's to be in the New York Times or the Washington Post. And of course, everybody wants that. But that's not necessarily the best thing for a client. And it's not always achievable, depending on what stories they've got, what kind of angles we can get. And so what they're coming for, I think, partly is to find an agency that's honest with them about what the outcomes can be. So I think what you have to start with is a kind of reevaluation of what tier one media targets are now, and to be quite upfront about it. We, over the years, have always wanted clients to be in the national media, but unless it's, say, a British company that's entrepreneurial, fundraising, and has a unique or brilliant product, it doesn't matter whether it's IT or whether it's some other form of technology or innovation. They're unlikely to get coverage until they're pretty well established. So we're very wise to this, and we've started to kind of map how much more attention clients get if actually they're focusing on what we would call the tier one trade or business media. where they're more likely to be featured often. So they build up a profile. They're more likely to be written about by journalists who have inside knowledge, who are technically able and understand the product or the service, and who have an interest in developing a relationship. So it's an entirely different approach. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't aim for the top, we should, but we do have to be realistic, and clients do have to listen to what's realistic. So when they do have something really outstanding to talk about, they can go and we can get those kinds of stories. But otherwise, they're missing out on the opportunity to gear their agency up to go and get brilliant stories for them in really influential trades that are read by, influencers and specifiers in their own industry, make more sales as a result. So I think that that's something that we're seeing change, and clients are needing to be a bit more adaptable in their expectations.
Yeah, I think setting realistic expectations for clients is so important. It kind of ties into the idea of transparency and building trust. Do you see transparency as something that's really important in building long-term agency relationships?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. And, there's nothing quite so rewarding as working with a client who's on the same page as you and is really pushing you all the way because you're in it together. I think the best clients that you can have are those that see you as their partner and they're open with you about the challenges they've got. They give you access to all the materials that you need. They make it possible for you to absolutely do your best job. And a lot of that is about them being transparent and us being transparent about what's possible and what's not possible, and each listening to the other's point of view. Because unless you're realistic, you're just going to be disappointed. And we would never want to disappoint anybody. We want to delight them with what we produce. And so, yeah, set your expectations high, but be realistic about it, be transparent in your approach, and you'll really benefit from that, the agency and the client as well. I'm sure you would agree with that, Jen. You've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And your point about prioritizing trades at a certain stage in company growth, I think is so important. We recently had a client that they service enterprise, but they also focus pretty heavily on MSSPs. And we placed a news topic as well as a byline in MSSP alert, and they got a lead directly from it. The prospect came to them and said, we had evaluated competitors and we weren't really satisfied. We didn't know that you were out there, but we saw this article in this publication and immediately reached out. So I just think that's a great example of how focusing on trades or like publications that may have smaller audiences, but much more specific to your value prop
Well,
can make a measurable difference
yeah.
in PR
No, I
efforts.
agree with you. I was sitting in a meeting with a sales team recently, and they were saying how much more interaction they'd had with customers since we'd started doing the PR for them and reaching out to get channel coverage. A lot of their customers are resellers and integrators, and they really want to influence them. And the channel might look like it's a very small number of publications, but actually they're so influential if you're a vendor who uses the channel to sell. So that was really good feedback, and it's exactly, of course, what we want to hear, because then you know that you're making a difference. So yeah, I agree with you completely.
Absolutely. So, shifting a bit, let's talk about clients that want or need to have an international presence. How important is it to have boots on the ground locally where they need visibility? I mean, we've got email, Slack, Zoom, like ways to reach out across the Atlantic. But why is it important to have someone there that knows the space?
Well, I don't need to preach to the converted where you're concerned, I don't think. Because obviously we were your boots on the ground in the UK for a long time, and I'm sure we will be in the future. And the benefit, I guess, is first and foremost that, if you're in a different time zone, you can respond to something immediately. And there's always that backup. If you've got a client that's based in the US and something happens in a different part of the world and it happens in our part of the world, we can act on it. So there's that. There's also, the kind of trusted local relationships with media that an agency will have in its own territory, which leads to, I would say, a lot better media monitoring and coverage. You know what's going on in your own local backyard. And then there are there's cultural relevance. Things are not the same in different countries. And having worked in multicultural campaigns for quite a lot of years, things work here that don't work in Germany, say, or we've for a long time had the issue of whether op-eds and bylines can be placed in the States, whether it has to be exclusive there before it can be used anywhere else. There are the slight language things. So there are many different issues, I think, that are relevant. But also, your own country, you know the market, what the regulations are. And in technology, these things are very important, particularly when it comes to cybersecurity. The rules in the EU and the UK are very different to the rules in the US. So we have to be on top of that. And I think it makes it easier if you're in that particular country. And of course, physically, you're present. So if there's an event or an interview and it's face to face, then you're there to host. So there's a whole multitude of reasons, Jen, why clients need their agency on the ground in that country, I would say.
Yeah, it's more than just adding S's instead of Z's,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's all of that and a U in colour and so on. Yeah, definitely a lot more than that.
So for a client that's looking to maybe break into the UK, what would you recommend they do as a first step?
If they've already got an agency in the States, then I think our preference is always to work with the agency that they've got, share knowledge, share experience, work in partnership. If they don't already have an agency, then I would say that we can start from scratch with them. But they will need to understand the local market, and it helps if they've got some kind of sales team or salesperson or a representative anyway here, because then there is somebody we can refer to and also somebody who would be their local spokesperson. So establishing some kind of hold in the market apart from through the PR agency is really important, I would say, to start with, and try and make everything as localized as possible, because just like in any country, the UK media don't really want everything to be, directly from the States or directly from wherever the headquarters are. They want it localizing. They haven't got time to do it themselves, and they want it to be appropriate to here. So it makes it a lot easier for PR people to actually gain traction if that approach has been thought about in advance. And that would be, I guess, the most important thing to start off with. And have a story, something to say. That's pretty fundamental.
Absolutely. Well, I know from working with you personally what a great partner you are and your agency is, both to other agencies and to your clients. Tell me, in your opinion, what separates a okay or a good partner from a great partner?
I think you have to think of your partner as somebody who's sitting right there in the office with you. So if I use our relationship with Look Left as an example, the fact that we were connected on Slack, the fact that we were, on the same calls with the client every week, week in, week out, and that we then had follow-on calls so that we were aligned. That's working in partnership, sharing information, planning together, deciding what your KPIs are going to be together so that you're realistic about what you then take to the client. That's real partnership, and understanding the nuances, because, as I say, different countries have different ways of going about things. So what might work here wouldn't necessarily work in the US, and vice versa. But there are many, many things that do work really well on both sides. So it's a creative process, and really good partnerships take the best out of all the people on the team, regardless of where they are, and use it to the client's advantage. That's when a PR partnership is working well, and where it's seamless to the client as well, because they often don't want to be dealing with multiple different agencies, multiple different processes. So making it very straightforward for them is really important. And I think that that's something that we've done it together in the past, and I think clients have liked it a lot.
Absolutely. I've had more than one client say to me that managing agencies can be overwhelming. Maybe they're short-staffed. So I think that coming together, integrating with the client team is really important in adding value for them.
Yeah, I
Totally
agree with
agree.
that. And I mean, to that point, we have a PR coordinator, client coordinator on our team, who has, given that we work a lot with US companies and overseas companies, overseas to us, she manages different agencies in different countries in different time zones. She's super organized, and it's made a huge difference over the years. I mean, we've kept clients for many, many years, in part because we're effective, but also we're effective across lots of different countries. And that's all down to good coordination and a kind of realistic setting of the goals, which she is in charge of. So you've got to think about all of these things ahead of time, because everybody has their allotted role, but somebody needs to bring it all together and be the glue, and to be the main person to work with the client. So yeah, if all those things are in place, I think that's a good start for a relationship. Yeah.
Anything else that our listeners should know about media over in the UK?
I think that things have changed over the years, and content is king. But what I would say is that there are still many, many journalists out there who want to talk to companies. They want to talk to CEOs and have a really good understanding of the direction of travel. And in IT, I often find it's quite difficult to set up interviews. A lot of editors don't have a lot of time, but it's worth persevering with, because it's very easy to write and send in content, but some of the best and most effective PR coverage comes from going the extra mile, getting the interview, connecting your client with a reporter, and there's really no substitute for that, I don't think. So that's what we need to all keep striving for, even if it's difficult.
So we always ask at the end of our podcast, what is one thing our listeners should do today?
Set a goal, work hard to achieve it, and then be satisfied if you do. That would be what they should do.
Love it. Love it. All right, Julie. Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us today. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, Jen.
This has been the Share a Voice podcast, presented by Look Left Marketing. Subscribe today at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more B2B marketing insight, visit us at lookleftmarketing.com.